All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for joining session one of the Reimagine Woodlawn Working Group. I've sent you all correspondence, form to fill out. Thank you all for filling out the form and expressing your interest to rejoin the working group and pick up this work again. So we will watch green from this often. When people say that. All right. So, we're all friends and family here. So that reintroduce myself. My name is Ugo Sanya, Equity Officer with the Department of Housing. I am also a Woodlawn resident, been a Woodlawn resident for 8 years. That this neighborhood is near and dear to me, and I, intend on being in Woodlawn for years to come. So today's session is focused on the Housing Preservation Ordinance, specifically where it stands today and how this group will support the next phase of implementation. We're building on prior engagement, but shifting into a more structured, outcome-driven phase of work. Before we keep going back up, and I ask everyone to put your name in the chat. I want to make sure I just have an accurate record of who's in the group. I'll briefly walk through today's agenda so we can stay aligned. We'll start with context and a refresher on the ordinance, move into a performance snapshot, and then transition into a working discussion, focus on priorities and next steps. The goal is to keep us moving to ensure we leave with clear direction. So the purpose of today's session is in threefold. First is to establish a shared understanding of the ordinance and its intent. Second is to ground us in how these programs are performing today. And third, to begin identifying where adjustments may be needed to ensure the ordinance remains effective under the current market conditions. As we move forward, this group will play a key role in informing recommendations related to program design, funding approaches, and overall alignment with today's housing market. This is not just a discussion space. This is an advisory body focused on implementation outcomes. So the goal is to ensure the ordinance reflects current market conditions so that programs are not only available, actually accessible and effective. Before we get into the content, I want to set expectations for how we operate. We're looking for active and balanced participation, but also a focus on solutions. Contributions should be tied to implementation, what's working, what's not, and what can be improved on. I'll help guide the conversation to keep us focused as well as on time. So the ordinance, as a refresher, the ordinance was adopted in 2020 in response to anticipated displacement pressures tied to the Obama Presidential Library Center, rising property values, and increased speculative activity. The ordinance committed over $10 million in resources to support preservation, stabilization, and equitable development. The intent was to move beyond discussion and establish enforceable tools to protect long-term residents and maintain affordability and the Woodlawn community. The ordinance established a set of tools across the housing continuum, homeowner stabilization through repair grants, tenant protections through opportunity to purchase, multifamily preservation financing, city land disposition for affordable housing, development requirements tied to affordability. These tools were designed to work together to preserve affordability and guide development outcomes. So I'll quickly flag the Jackson Park Housing Ordinance here as it takes precedence in certain areas. I'll now turn it over to Edwin Ortiz Reyes, who's our Director of Planning, Research, and Development, to walk us through that at a high level.
Good afternoon, everyone. Like Ugo said, Director of Planning, Research, and Development, Director of Policy here at the Department of Housing, Elio Ortiz Reyes. The Jackson Park Ordinance really builds on the existing Woodlawn Ordinance and for a very small number of parcels expands some of the affordability requirements. So at a high level, it recommits the 63rd and Blackstone site, which was previously under the 20th ward is now in the 5th ward, to the same affordability requirements that were in the Woodlawn Ordinance, renewing our commitment to developing that site with affordable housing as resources become available. It also recommits the 52 lots that were in the Woodlawn Ordinance with no changes to any of the restrictions. Any lots that had not seen action or seen development are just renewed to be prioritized for affordable development. The biggest change that does come from the Jackson Park Ordinance is that it takes the existing Woodlawn Tenant Opportunity to Purchase program and expands the boundaries. So previously that program was confined to just the Woodlawn community area. It is now expanded to cover what we are calling the Jackson Park geography. So if you on the screen, that is the area bounded by blue, which covers sections of the 20th ward, the 5th ward, and a small chunk of the 6th ward. And mostly what the changes to this chapter does is bring it into alignment with the existing tenant opportunity to purchase in the northwest side to facilitate program implementation. In the coming weeks, you will see updated program materials, updated program rules, and an effective date for when the Jackson Park tenant opportunity to purchase will go into effect. We expect to have all of that in the next few weeks. Other than that, no other substantive changes to any of the existing programs from Woodlawn were impacted by the Jackson Park Ordinance. And I will pass it back to Ugo for the next sections.
Thank you, Edwin. Okay, so these programs were rolled out beginning in 2020. These programs in the ordinance and span three key areas. First is homeowner stabilization, rental and preservation tools, and new development on land and land-based strategies. Each program was designed with specific eligibility requirements, income thresholds, and intended outcomes across the housing continuum. I won't go into detail on each program here. What we're going to focus on next is how these programs have performed in practice. Okay, so this is where we shift from design to performance. So we're going to start with homeowner stabilization. On the screen here, the Home Improvement Grant Program deployed $1 million and supported 35 homeowners, but demand exceeded available funding and grants were often insufficient relative to repair cost. Looking at preservation tools, the Preserving Existing Affordable Rentals, our PAIR program, received no applications and did not preserve units through that program. Largely due to complexity and lack of competitiveness with private financing. The renewed Woodlawn did not result in any successful acquisition due to high property costs, rehab gaps, and limited program alignment with market conditions. On the multifamily side, the Woodlawn Loan Fund performed more effectively, supporting 6 buildings and 47 units, leveraging $4.35 million in private capital through participation, though participation remained limited. On land use, the city lots for working families has seen limited movement due to cost and development challenges. So we are seeing uneven performance across programs with several tools not aligning with current market realities. At a high level, this is not due to a lack of need, but a misalignment with today's market. So to ground this further, recent analysis from the DePaul Institute for Housing Studies highlights broader trends. The first is continued demand for rental housing, the loss of lower cost units, and lastly, rising multifamily prices. In Woodlawn specifically, we're seeing an elevated home asking prices paired with relatively limited buyer activity. So this indicates that there's market friction where pricing is outpacing absorption. Now, with that, that reinforces the need to focus on preservation, stabilization, and better alignment between program design and market conditions. Um, as far as land context on uh, while there's a significant number of city-owned lots in Woodlawn, many are already assigned or constrained with a smaller subset currently viable for development. This raises an important question around how land is prioritized and deployed to support affordability. At a higher level, what we're seeing across several programs that that again that lack of need and the misalignment. So the question for this group is not whether these tools are needed, but how they need to evolve and function in today's market. And that's what, really want to focus on as we move into, the next session and the next phase of the ordinance. So as we move forward, um, this group is expected to engage both during and between sessions. That will include, reviewing materials I'll be sending you all, providing feedback and helping identify where programs are not aligning with on-the-ground realities. So the goal is continuity and progress, not restarting a conversation each session. So for this section, I'm going to guide us through four focus questions. The goal is to keep responses tied to implementation, what you are seeing in practice and where alignment may be breaking down. And I'll also keep us moving to ensure we capture themes and stay on time. So I will the first question I have here, is from your perspective, what parts of the ordinance are working as intended? Next is, where are we seeing challenges or gaps in how these programs are performing today? How are current market conditions impacting feasibility on the ground? And as a group, where should we focus our efforts over the next 6 months? So I, give everyone the opportunity here to unmute yourselves, and you can take any question that's on the screen, and we can just have a general discussion. Just here to listen and make sure that we're capturing everyone's voices, so we can, really provide great recommendations for next steps.
Hello, Ego. This is Tara. I was trying to search for the raise your hand button here, but for some reason right now I can't catch it. But I would like to, that first question. I think from previous work, I'd like to jump in there because a lot have been on my mind since we met maybe 2 years ago as the Woodlawn Working Group, and the projects that I think were successful. We did add some units of affordable housing along 63rd, but then POA, who had the lot that we had last met on and took a vote and they came out in favor of POA at 63rd and Ellis. Since those units haven't been built, then I can't add to our number of affordable units that's been gained by the community since the ordinance. And how do we look at that as far as numbers if there are projects online but just haven't started yet on some of these lots?
Mm.
You need me to break it down?
No, I'm just listening. Just wanna, that's more of a funding,
So,
um,
mhm.
issue. Yeah. One,
Well,
yeah.
it was a question you said from the question is from my perspective, what parts of
Hmm.
the ordinance are working as intended? The community engagement part. Well, we
Yeah.
met as a Woodlawn Working Group, went through the process of gathering groups and people from the community, sat down and looked at some projects, including the one at 63rd and Drexel. And then the second one we as a group was looking at through community engagements, which is the best part about this process, was that piece. So that is what I see from my perspective as what parts of the ordinance are working as intended. The community engagement part and the group selected by the community to represent them throughout this process. So I'll get a thumbs up to that.
Appreciate it. Anyone else?
I just want to make sure I clarify Ms. Tara's question, or not clarify, but understand. So, Ms. Tara, I think what the question you're asking is, or maybe, no, I'm going to change the words.
Okay.
Maybe the other thing I heard was maybe can the ordinance, I heard, and you tell me if I'm wrong.
Okay.
If we go through the community engagement process, that is a good one that is spelled out in the ordinance. And as we identify projects, can the ordinance speak to the process to get to the projects being approved and or get from community engaged information approval to actual building in a timely fashion? Can the ordinance speak to that? I don't know if that's what you're saying, Miss Madison, Miss Tara, but I would just throw that out there as an additional question because those
Yes.
things were approved and we did just get approved and just finally announced. It was funded today. Yes, I just put that in the chat, Justin. So that project was just approved today. But the point
Right.
being, if you talked about it 2 years ago, can the ordinance speak to the process to get from decision by community
Mhm.
to shovel in the ground?
Exactly.
So,
Just
I don't know if that's what you meant.
so,
Okay, okay.
so is
you
that,
got it.
and first of all, congratulations on that. Is that, are you saying that on the ordinance to add that piece from community engagement to shovel in the ground, just add that piece to the ordinance itself?
I don't know if that's what I'm just saying. I don't know if Miss Tara meant that, but I think that was what I heard her articulating.
Okay.
And I'm simply saying I don't know if it can even be changed. But is there a mechanism? I don't think there's a mechanism right now to speak to that. But does it? And if it doesn't, can it?
Yes.
Or maybe we don't agree. I don't know, but I think
Me
that's
and
something to at
Felicia
least
on
talk
the
about.
same. Yeah, me and
It,
Felicia, yeah, we're thinking the same as she stated. It's just the same. What parts of the ordinance are working? The community engagement as intended. What parts that we're uncomfortable about? Me personally, about the process, I added in is just what Felicia said. From the time that we meet as a group, we go through the process, make the decisions, and then we know some about the turnaround because then they got to go through the
yeah.
process and plan for their credits and all of that. So that was my statement was, from my perspective, what worked in this ordinance as intended was the community engagement process because the other way it was intended was to add additional units of affordable housing in the community, but it slowed when we stopped engaging after the last project. Is that clear?
So you mean why no, we can't add an additional layer? That's probably some of the recommendations we can
No,
put
I don't want
forward.
you to add an additional layer, and I don't want us to get too far off the topic because there's
Mhm.
other people on here that need to express
Right.
themselves, and we got a short time. But my answer to that first question is: what parts of the ordinance are working as intended? It was the community engagement process because we did the work, we came to the table, we went through the process, we selected projects to go ahead. One we
Mhm.
see, so that's the part that I see working intended. Felicia also heard me mention, and she wanted clarity from what I was intending, and I agree with her. What happens when we make decisions on projects, and then, you know, how do we know if they ever even gonna come online? But that might be straying into another conversation. But just to wrap my answer up to this initial question is the community engagement process. That was the best thing working that came out of this ordinance.
I think, yeah, as far as that process, I do have another slide in which that is a breakdown of the sessions. So those pieces will be added,
Okay.
will be addressed. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, the slides will be something. Yes.
I think another thing, Tyra, is that it's not a lot of development that has come through the community voting process for the 63rd Street lot. Since POA, it's just been nothing has been to the table yet. So that's another thing, the slow process of developers coming to even implement building something on those lots.
And why do you think they're not building? Someone just had a comment about
Can you repeat
developers
your
not
question,
building on
Ryan?
lots.
Yeah.
Somebody just made a comment about people not building on certain lots. Do they want to speak more to that as to why they believe that that's the case?
Wouldn't that be an answer for the second question? Are we still not on the first for everybody to get an input?
Yeah,
So
I'm just letting everyone, you can pick any, Sarah, you can pick any
Okay.
question that you want to.
I'd like to jump in here just to answer this kind of question about why haven't there been more proposals on 63rd Street? I think everybody remembers, we went through this RFP process for Woodlawn Social. We identified both Woodlawn Social and a runner-up project that we thought were good, and the community had buy-in on that. The issue is, again, these because of the deeply affordable requirements, the resources are limited to these 2-year cycles of funding rounds from DOH, right? So the best case scenario is really that we get a development like Woodlawn Social coming every 2 years, or being approved for funding every 2 years. So it is, we shared this, I think, when we did our community meetings prior to the RFP, that it was going to take, given the 52 lot, it was going to take 15, 20 years at best, right? 30
Yeah.
years, maybe even, to fill that in. So just to put that in perspective, and that's, I think, the part of the point of discussion, right?
Thank you, Justin.
Yep.
I will add to Justin's point that the Woodlawn ordinance does have deeper affordability requirements than what we at DOH would traditionally fund in our normal affordable housing development, which makes this development process even more complicated. We don't have all the resources in-house to reach those lower levels of affordability, so we depend on partnerships with other agencies, with the state, with CHA, with the Chicago Low Income Housing Trust Fund, in order to be able to meet those requirements. And all of us are equally strapped for resources and operate on similar development timelines, which only adds to what Justin just mentioned, for development taking time, especially if we want to be able to build at those levels of affordability.
So can I offer this to, I think that is actually true. Those are very true statements. It may be part of what we could do. Maybe developers can walk through and at least give people a sense of, somewhat high level, the process to get on our end, to get from decision to shovel in terms of the capital stack and what we have to put together to make the deal work. Similarly, maybe there's a way to offer some educational materials to community to share what was just shared here. Because a lot of people don't know the funding rounds, the process, and there's got to be a way to make it simple so community, if they're deciding on on projects in their neighborhood, they should probably at least have a snapshot of what it takes to get from an idea to a decision to shovel. So maybe it's more about engagement in the process, or at least understanding the process, informing community, and educating of the process overall. I don't know. That might sound like goobly gop. Tell me, guys, if that sounds like goobly gop.
No,
No,
that
it actually
actually
No,
doesn't, Felicia,
No, it
no,
doesn't.
because
it
clear.
makes a lot of sense. And one of the
Yeah.
things that we struggle with a lot in the development space is the community education, not just in the resources, but in the timelines, which I think is uh, a pattern that I am noticing here for the folks who have been pleased with the community engagement process. I recognize all the work that Google has put into this work over the last few years. And there's always more to do in that space to meaningfully engage community. So one thing that we can produce, and we have done this in the past, is information about different funding resources, the underwriting process that we undertake, and then how long development takes generally for our work. But I do want to be upfront, I guess, on the community engagement process is one piece of this. We also, as a city, undertake a really robust and oftentimes maybe a little too long of an underwriting process to make sure that our deals are viable and that we're investing public resources correctly. And in those spaces, those are areas where we have less control because we have to meet federal, state, local regulations for funding, and make sure that all the projects are viable, are well planned, and are well executed before we invest and before we finance them. And all of that takes time, and a little bit of time that's outside of our control, partially.
So I would say to that, I think one of the things that we learned, and I'm gonna tell you, it was a hard ass lesson that Paul learned the hard way. But one of the things that we learned is community, we as residents understand when you tell us what it is. And we have to take a step back. It costs a little bit more in pre-development for us. We have to take a step back and say, well, here's the pieces of what it takes to get the deal done. I think what you just articulated can be synthesized in a really simple kind of chart, flow chart that says, here's what this takes with projected timelines, just so people have a sense of what goes into making these deals happen. Because if you're making a decision about something that's so important in your neighborhood, you gotta want to know what's the stuff behind the sauce. And if we found that once you demystify the Oz curtain, what's behind the curtain? What is it that takes, what makes the sausage happen? And be realistic. We all understand it. We all understand. We've been very clear about budgets. With these budgets are real. I'm gonna tell you what it is, and I'm gonna tell you what it's not, what we can do, what we can't do. But if we take away the mystery around what is behind the odds and just walk people through it, and it shouldn't be hard. I know we have graphic designers and people who are creative and marketing and branding folks who can take all that you just said and put it together in a here's where we start, here's where it finished from thought to shovel in the ground, and it then helps people to have a better sense of what the process is and what they're kind of voting on. I think it will help also to calm the angst a little bit, not the whole thing, not in its entirety, but at least give people some sense of, okay, we know this is going to take some time to do this deal, and we now understand what the pieces are to make it work. Really simple. Don't have to get in the weeds. These pro formas and these our budgets are like 15-page multi-tab Excel sheets. People, you don't have to see that, but you can say the basics so people understand because we all will. I think. I think that helps. And it's an easy do and it's a win-win. Can people can see what really happens when these things come to fruition.
Does that go for 1 to 4 units as well?
Absolutely. Why I
Okay.
think it should be anything that's gonna go on the ground. If I'm sitting in my neighborhood and I
Mhm.
see a building go up, what's the process? And you don't have to be specific to each building, but the process overall.
Oh.
so I understand what Felicia is saying.
Mhm.
So it is very much informative because the developments that have to go through Alderwoman Taylor's process, those two community meetings, the residents get to hear and ask the developers as they're showing the community their plans and their timeline of building and their finances and how long it's going to take them to build. They understand that process. When you guys host the meetings online for the community, they don't really see that. They don't get to ask those questions. Basically, it's just basically they're voting for a project without actually hearing the project from A to Z.
I
Are
have
there even projects for people to like look at if the funding isn't like, or the time horizon is a little off for 2 years and it won't take, 20, 30 years to get this land actually utilized?
Right. So if this is a project that's possibly coming and the community actually voted on the project and it will be coming, the community should have a right to see the project stabilized in full content from A to Z, how it's going to be coming to fruition.
No, I get that, but I mean, we still got to get some projects on the ground, though, right?
yeah,
And make it easy for folks
Right.
to
yeah.
ensure that there are projects available to be developed.
And
Right.
I have a question about that. Moving down to that question, the third question. How are current market conditions impacting feasibility on the ground? Well, I just read an article. I saw two postings from the Housing Finance Department from HUD. But I found one posted about this big, beautiful, ugly bill. And this policy that HUD is encountering called Making America Build in America. So I saw affordable housing developers and others stating this is going to have a huge impact because their materials in order to go through HUD's process, unless their project is 25% over cost for them to buy that product in America, they won't be able to get it to finish their development because of this new policy of Made in America, Build in America. Are y'all familiar with it?
Yes.
So how that, so good. So my question, where are we seeing, that's a challenge to me, and it will cause a gap in how these programs are not only performing today, but will perform tomorrow. So how can, what's your feedback on that? How do you, that's what I think. It's going to be definitely a hard challenge going forward.
So yeah, we're on the same page as you, Miss Tara. So I
Tara,
think you're referencing Build America, Buy America, or Buy
yeah.
America, Build America.
Mhm.
The short of it is that we are still doing analysis of how these regulations are going to impact our development timeline, but we already assume that they're going to impact development costs because sourcing materials, to your point, sourcing materials is going to become both more difficult and more expensive.
Right.
Um, the full impact is still to be determined. We are still doing that analysis, but we do expect some downstream issues over the next, I think we have until the end of this year to begin compliance with that program. So going into next year, we do expect to start seeing those costs go up as we have to adhere to the new federal regulations. This is even more true because we depend heavily on federal resources for our affordable housing development. And that's not just us, CHA is on the same boat, DPD is on a similar boat, so is IDA. So we're all going to be impacted by these new requirements, and how we absorb these costs is still an open question that we don't have a full grasp on yet.
And it will impact if developers are even attracted to the idea of developing affordable housing. Am I correct?
Well, I mean, it's going to determine whether or not development in general is feasible. If all of a sudden material and construction costs are even higher than they are right now, which is one of the big obstacles that we struggle with from going to the question about market conditions. We struggle a lot with the cost of construction, cost of labor, and cost of materials, and that's only going to get worse.
Yeah. I just wanted to put some truths out there so that we ain't living in a lot of our world like we do. And sometimes we were blindsided, I will tell you, because there are things that took care of that we weren't informed into after the fact. But that's the reason I brought this up, because a lot of us on this call are informed, very informed. So those will be issues that we will want to address directly. And I don't want to feel like I'm getting smoke blowed in my ears telling me that there's a process that we're going to take us to where we need to go. If I know there are other outside factors that will affect that. And we need to, as a community, have that honest, like she was saying, breaking it down. Felicia was saying, we need to understand your audience. We're intelligent enough to know and understand these processes for you to bring to us. So then when we are looking as an outside force, outside of working with you guys, we can know what we're talking about. My alderman, as a staff member, we had Development 101, so we could walk down the street and look at a building and know just how to break that down for development costs. And that was something like Felicia alluded to. These are things that the community needs to understand, and we're their voice, and we can go back and tell them. Because they see a $5 million property being built, whether it's condo, apartments, or a home. Their biggest question is like, how did this happen? But if I can explain to them, this is how this works. Because this is still the same plan from Daley of mixed income communities in 2026. I don't see any difference from my time working with that administration back then at the beginning of this. So, but I do know over the years, what I recognize is I had to gain some more knowledge to understand how community development works. And so do our average community member. So it is important that we're getting information that we can pass on, so they don't look at us like, y'all just full of crap. You know what I'm saying? So I just want to make sure that we're having, this is why I brought up this question, so we could get off the first one, because it don't seem like we had moved on, because this is crucial on how it's going to affect. We can sit here and pick plots and pick plans and talk to developers all day. And we know it's a long process. But if they can't get their costs or get their building built, then let's talk reasonably. It ain't going to be 30 years. It might be 40 years. But I digress. I'll leave the floor to somebody else. Sometimes I talk too much.
I did have a question actually about actually going back to the first question about the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act. And in general, I believe that that's something that is beneficial, but I do wonder in practice if it's been utilized, and if so, to what extent in the community.
And our community is starting now, I think, with the building on 65th and Stony. But I know where it took place in a community up north, and it didn't pan out for the residents. That was the first pilot case up north, around the Edgewater or Lakeview area. So the tenants did try to get together to do this. But then it was about how long did a tenant want to be invested? And same question again, how many people can pass a mortgage when you're talking about all this group of people? But I do know a project on 71st Street where some homeowners bought a corner building together because of what was going on. So it can be done, but you have to really be honest about the resources available and the resources that the individual will have to bring to the table to get a bank loan. And take care of any back repairs that building was probably left in the first place.
Yeah, I don't know if there are opportunities for like chambers of commerces or other organizations to support tenants in their process to, form groups or get financing or anything, but curious to how it's working in this particular area, especially since you all are going to extend this to.
Well, like I said, you can look, there's a project that's up north that went through it last year. And they've been extensive writing about how they formed a tenant association to purchase the building and the issues they ran into, because there's a 6-month notice period that has to be given to the landlord, to the owner. He got to get him a grace period. But when that tenant association went to get that paperwork from the city of Chicago, that's where the ball got dropped, because that office wasn't ready yet to facilitate this process. So I haven't heard any more about the group up north and about what they're going to do. I think they done dropped it. But now here in my backyard, it might be happening here. So I want to make sure that, look, like I said, we are real people here. You don't buy a building if you ain't got the right credit score, you don't have the right money or down payment, and everybody in that building is going to have to pass a credit report. Then they got to commit to at least a 30-year mortgage.
Yeah, the building up north in Rogers Park was much different from the one on 65th and Stony. That building went into foreclosure. The landlord never fixed anything on the building violations or anything like that. The tenants had not had to pay rent in a while because the owner of the building was not paying any bills to the city. He wasn't paying on his mortgage. So, um, their narrative of it's an Obama fault is they should have taken action to that over a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
And Ryan, I can, to your question, 2 points is first that the existing Woodlawn pilot, the way that it was set up, it was not really conducive to support tenants in purchasing their property in that community because it was restricted to only properties with 10 units or more. And the the baseline cost of those a property of that size was just borderline impossible with all the points that Ms. Tara brought up. Down payment, earnest money deposits, credit checks. It was really difficult for tenants to actually take advantage of that right just simply because of how the program was structured. What we're doing now is reducing that threshold so that any rental property is eligible for tenant purchase. Hopefully that facilitates a little bit more capacity from the tenant side to purchase. That doesn't preclude any of the things that Ms. Tara mentioned. They still have to do all of that. But there are now avenues for third-party rights assignment or to purchase in collaboration with community entities. So if a chamber of commerce or another community group wants to act on behalf of the tenants or provide financing, that's facilitated now under the updated program. We do fully recognize that there is a gap in financing generally for tenants to be able to purchase a building. It's one of the items that we are working on internally at DOH as a policy matter to identify how we can facilitate financing and lending for tenants that want to exercise their right of first refusal. But we recognize that the market is really difficult right now, and tenants do face an uphill battle with limited resources to be able to purchase their buildings.
And so for this new update for having, I guess, not a 10 unit, but I guess maybe 1 unit or multi-units.
Yeah, like a 2 or 3 flat would be eligible.
Yeah. So are we providing, I guess, or thinking about providing chambers of commerce or other economic development corporations or any other sponsor who could support them with a toolkit to best support those populations? Or how are we thinking about that?
Yeah, so we're actively working with our automatic partners to get information out. And as we launch the program in Jackson Park, just like we did in the Northwest side, one of the pending items is working with community partners to get them educated about what this program is, how it works, and how they can support tenants in their community. We do recognize that one of the best ways that this program works is in partnership with community-based organizations that are maybe a little bit better resourced than a group of tenants who might just be finding out that their building's up for sale today and now have to scramble to figure out the money piece.
So while it's a different model, I would also say slightly different model. The Center for Shared Ownership that's inside of CRN does a lot around education for residents and neighbors who are looking to do some version of shared ownership. Now, wow, this is slightly different, what I believe we're talking about, trying to accomplish here. They have a robust inventory of information around how to educate residents, and just if you live in your building, you've been living it for a long time, how can the two of you work together to own it? A little bit larger conversation around shared ownership. It's a ton of resources because this model of ownership is growing, even though to the point it's still hard to finance. Um, I know HUD had a program, the Move to Market, that was embedded in HUD. That was another project here in Woodlawn a few years ago, where the individuals kind of were all Section 8 holders, and they were trying to then be their own managers and operators and get to the point where they could figure out financing and make it work. And it was just very hard to do because capital is always an issue. but the education piece is just as critical. Because even if you have the capital, you have to know how to long-term sustain the property and maintain the property. So I would say another tool is the Center for Shared Ownership and a couple of others. This is kind of the shared ownership model. Going back to that is growing. It started to grow recently. Just to offer a resource.
I think this is going to be hopefully the last thing I say because I've been talking a lot. But Ms. Felicia, one of the things that we are trying to incentivize through this program is specifically collective ownership. Um, it helps preserve affordability in the long term. It also gives tenants full control of the asset in ownership to like build wealth and generational stability. And we want to invest and incentivize all of those things. The open question is what resources and what support government can provide with, understanding that we don't have the financial resources, but what things can we facilitate out in community and with community organizations to get both the education piece out and the capital piece, which to your point, I think are equally important.
So I would just offer that I'm sure you talked to them because I know there's this connection. CCLF, the Center for Shared Ownership was embedded in CCLF, but I would just talk to them because they also knew funding streams potentially. But again, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole, but it's a couple of resources out there to think about. They are very hard to do, but we just put our muscle together. It can be done. It might take a little time, and that's a project that takes a long time to do. We are
Yeah.
doing this.
I do want to touch base on what Justin said, which is definitely critical, is the piece of lowering the threshold to 2 to 3 flats. It is a big deal because originally I am from New York City, and what was going on in New York City was those brownstones and all in the brick and whatnot, they were literally deconverting and turning them into single family homes. And that pushed out a lot of people. And this is exactly what we're seeing, like on the north side, Bronzeville. Now we're seeing that in East Woodlawn, where they're taking, multifamily homes and turning them into single family, well over $1 million. So that is, one of the key things that we definitely really need to review, and that will definitely give everyone in the community like that to actually be able to purchase a building.
I'll just building off of what Ugo said and Justin, and this will hopefully be the last thing I say. One of the big challenges that we've seen in the Northwest side with the existing tenant opportunity to purchase is that in Logan Square, Humboldt Park, property prices, housing costs are just too far gone. We're seeing, 80-year-old buildings going up for over $1 million for sale. And even at that point, it's too hard for tenants to purchase. In Woodlawn, even though we're seeing costs rise really quickly, they're not yet at the level that we see in the Northwest side. And so key investments and targeted investments now to support tenant purchases will help and could help slow gentrification and preserve affordability before things are too far gone, like we've seen in other parts of the city. That's partially why we're amending the program now, so we can start working on slowing those rising housing costs before they get completely out of control. Which, if you ask some of us, they might already be, but doing the most that we can to prevent them from getting worse.
How do we, I hear a lot of things. This is Marcus. And education is definitely key, and also in marketing and advertising this ordinance. So people in the entire community are fully aware of what's taking place and what's going on and what's the vision for Woodlawn and what opportunities are beneficial to the residents over here in the community. So another thing, a part of the ordinance that was good was the grants that people were receiving to improve on their homes that they had. I know Maddie Butler, God rest her soul, she was looking like for a property freeze tax, which never came into fruition. But now that we have this ordinance taking place, we got to do some creative thinking in regards to like what we saying that developments are going to take 30 years, like 5 developments get done in 10 years. So we have to look at things creatively. I don't know how we can help I'm the current interim board chair for the Woodlawn Chamber of Commerce. How can we help get information out? How can we help educate people within the community? How can we push for emerging developers? Because it's emerging developers that's within the community too as well. So how can we all work together to ensure that everybody knows exactly what's going on? We all in agreement that sometimes, and we know many times when developments do take place, everybody's not going to be in agreement with everything. But one thing that we do know that everyone should be aware of exactly what's taking place and how it can benefit them. So a lot of things are taking place. We know in Woodlawn, the presidential center is coming. We know that the whole community has changed upside down within the last 10 years. But right now that we've been working and fighting for these ordinances and advocating for these ordinances, how can we all work together and think creatively, right? Using that people power along with the city of Chicago, along with our government officials, along with all the resources that we have in the community to make sure the word is getting out. And like everyone is saying, we have to educate everyone because we can say grants are available, but it takes a lot of paperwork just to get those grants. And if we don't have people and tools to help educate and also help guide them through the whole entire process, people go look at it, take one stab of it, open it up. They can't do it. They don't have the resources to help them. They go shut it down, right? And then that's when it comes into this mindset where people actually look at and think of we're being pushed out and we have no assistance. We have no one to help us. So I don't know what we can, what I think what we can do. I'm not going to say I don't know what we can do is make sure we marketing, we advertising, making sure we making things into the simplest form that we can do. What I've been hearing, and also let's make sure we educating the community. Let's marketing, let's advertising. It's good. It's great we had this working group, but how do we market and advertise it and making sure this word is getting out to everybody?
All right, my brother Marcus. I'll add to this. Keep doing what you have been doing in this community for over 20 years. And that's what I want to say to my earlier comment. We are very much aware of the generational wealth that already and still does exist in the Woodlawn community. So that may be not our major issue. What we're thinking is we want to make sure that we don't lose the affordable housing here that's already in the community. So we don't need platforms, we don't need politics, we don't need talking points. We are really educated. Some of us have been fighting in this community just to get to and maintain this one point, this moment here. Marcus has been here, probably Marcus and a few other people. So they worked. Listen to them. Let's not make us a political point. We got ideas. He done threw out 10. And I think then our relationship can move forward better and we can bring that information back to our community and talk to each and every community member because we got this. It's our community. So that's what we wanted to see. So please let us lead. I want to say in this group, I guess that'll be my final say because some of the conversation I hear is like, you're telling us, this, it's a confined box. And community engagement is not about that. It's feeling less than community engagement by some comments I've heard this evening. And I'm glad Marcus just spoke because Woodlawn has had a strong and continue to have a strong fight. Woodlawn proud and strong. I got my banner in the window. So I'll tell you what the people can use, what tools will make them create generational wealth, what things they may not be and say like, maybe this ain't what I want to do, but I'm listening to the people. And now I didn't get on the soapbox. I apologize.
No worries, no worries. Wendy, do you mind the comment that you led? Can you speak more on that, please?
Sure. So I keep hearing that we need to inform the community, but the community is endless. Who specifically in the community would most benefit from this information? And once we identify that group, I suggest that we concentrate our efforts on informing that particular group first so at least they know. But by saying, oh, we need to tell everybody in the community, not everybody in the community cares. Not everybody in the community is interested in this information. So who is it that really needs to know this so we can figure out how to reach them?
Yep.
Well,
And
I
if we
was
can't identify that, then we've got a really big problem because we're talking about something that we want to do and we don't know who will actually benefit from it or actually do it.
Mhm.
So who?
so the who to me is like the grassroots organizations, businesses within the community, people who have tenure in the community, a lot of individuals who have suffered through the atrocities in this community of being under resourced.
And
Let
what
them
is it
know.
exactly that we want them to know? Because that's a
We want
whole lot of people.
I
so
think where do they want to be in the community? I guess that's the question. Where do you see your part in the broader community is a question to ask a
But
person.
I thought we were talking
Yeah,
about this ordinance.
you know what I'm saying? What's behind this is like you said, this is also a transitional community because it is and it can change. So at the moment, you have to really engage that person where they're at and what they want to see. If they got the buy-in, and if they not, move on.
Yeah, maybe I asked it wrong. What
Yeah.
is it that
I,
we
yeah,
feel as though that somebody needs to know?
It's been 10 years, so I'm sure in the last 10 years, and residents have changed so significantly, especially in the market units and homes added by the new building that then took place. They don't know. It's a good 100+ people that don't.
So basically what you're saying is that we just need to do a general FYI for everybody in the
Update.
community.
You've
They
been in
know
this.
that.
You've been in this a long while, so I would say we could get the information that we already have, run it through AI, and
I do
come
want
up
to,
What?
with those new 150 and probably 200 because I think they have added in the last year and a half too on my block at least 60 new units. So they're alone. Now we talking about Woodlawn, East Woodlawn, and West Woodlawn. So that could maybe be 300 more people, new residents, and it's
And
going to
what is it
again.
exactly that you think they need to know? What the ordinance?
One, the community that they have just become a part of, a long-standing community that has a set of values and principles and
Right, but
relations.
I thought that we were talking about the ordinance.
I want
I
to,
thought this.
Housing is developing housing and
I know,
controlling of the housing, making sure we have mixed housing in this community.
So
All
if I moved, so
of
you're
it.
telling me if I move into Woodlawn and I've bought my home or I'm renting, you want me to read a pamphlet about
I don't
what?
want you to do nothing you don't want to do. That's what you ain't hear me.
Oh
I'm
my
going to
God.
engage.
I want to get back to,
Engage you and say, hello, I'm Tara. I've been here 16 years. Welcome to the community. Let me tell you a little bit about the background. And they may say, oh, yeah, no, I'm not interested. Cool. Or they may say, oh, I like things like that. How do I get involved?
I want to get back to,
Okay,
and thank you.
and who would do this? Like
Hold
who's
on, Miss
gonna
Moody.
walk around up to people and do this?
Hold on. I want to interject. I want to keep this, I want to stay this, because we're very off track right now. I want to, steer this back to the ordinance,
And I
specific.
apologize.
So, no, it's fine. That's what, what we're here for. I do want to address, London's question. I know we have about 22 minutes left. London did ask, from a development feasibility standpoint, what are some adjustments and tools we should be considering to ensure the city-owned sites are not just reserved, but actually developed in a timely, realistic way? What are some barriers we're seeing in delivering projects under the current requirements? So this is specific to the ordinance. I want to keep it specific to the ordinance. I'm going to open it up to anyone to, uh, say a piece about that.
I mean, I think that's definitely a very good question, and especially since we're expanding this to, the South Shore community. If they're now gonna also, or I'll say we now, I live in South Shore, will be subjected to city-owned land that won't be likely be developed, because of the current, financial horizon that the grants, have, then that's definitely, I would say, a burden, and something that we would want to see change. Like I, as a resident of South Shore, would prefer to see some type of development in these empty lots as opposed to a timeline where that's not gonna, be happening. I imagine more people want to see more shovels in the ground, more productive uses of this land, as opposed to it remaining the same. And it does seem to me that if we remain with the status quo, that we're looking at this, this 30, 40 year time frame for folks to be able to, actually do something with this, which I don't think seems tenable, and it doesn't increase the amount of residents who will ultimately be living in either of these communities.
Yeah, so I definitely second that, and that's what we're going to like the next few sessions. I have another slide on that. We're going to discuss that the feasibility standpoint, how we put the recommendations together in order to put shelters into the ground. The most affordable housing tends to be older housing. What is built today would be more affordable than when you built 10. Go ahead.
I just have a question. I know I've heard us discuss there are a lot of variables that are out of our control in terms of these developments, in terms of the political climate, in terms of funding. So then my question is, what can we do? How creative can we get? Have you all done studies in other cities to see how they are um, trying to prevent or not necessarily deter gentrification, but trying to reserve affordable housing in those communities where the residents wants to stay. They've invested, they've raised their families, and they want to stay in these communities, but they're trying to not be pushed out by, certain um, increase in housing, other factors. So have you all done studies? Are you going to come back and be more and help us be creative in designing what this can look like? And what exactly do you need from us?
Yeah, so that's what the work just that's what we're looking to do. We are in the process of putting together, recommendations uh for this ordinance, and that's what I'm calling on to everyone on this call to provide such recommendations to us so we can add on so we can make the ordinance a lot more stronger for these market conditions of today. So in general, we're looking to make sure that we have everyone's voice here, to put a real plan together, to make sure that we are serving the community correctly.
Okay, thank you.
And and also for next steps, we will have a follow-up survey and questions from the chat that we've gotten, as well as we can submit to have a more robust conversation the next few sessions.
Actually, I have a question.
Yeah.
Given, I guess, updates to TOPA with the Jackson Park ordinance, to lower the threshold and all that stuff, what is DOH thinking about in terms of, making changes that will allow for more development given the current time horizons and such for the new parts of South Shore that are included in this? Like, what are you all thinking or recommending? Or do you have a recommendation on like how we should be thinking about this to ensure that capital is able to be actually allocated and development is able to be utilized?
Okay. Would you like to take this?
Yeah. So Ryan, I'm going to get to your last question first because I think that's the most specific one. We don't have a list of recommendations yet, and that's partially why we've reconvened this working group. We recognize that there are a number of programmatic barriers and issues in program design. And we want to get a sense of how the community is interpreting and understanding these issues so we can put forward a list of recommendations that bring together our professional experience running the programs and having to execute, and also the community's perspective and understanding of what some of the barriers and obstacles have been. So the intention is for us to run through, and I think we'll get to this in a minute when we talk about like the next sessions, but the intention is for us to walk through some of the programs, the results that we've seen, where we have identified obstacles, gather community feedback, and then the deliverable from this reconvened working group will be a list of recommendations on how we can improve the ordinance, improve programs so that they're actually successful at preserving affordability, building more affordable, getting resources into the communities that need them.
Gotcha. And what's the plan to include more people from South Shore since it's now bigger than just Woodlawn?
That's actually a good question because the development programs that we are touching on here, with the exception of TOPA is kind of an outlier. None of the programs that we're touching on here are applicable to Woodlawn, or I'm sorry, to South Shore. They're still limited to just the Woodlawn community as it's defined in the 2020 ordinance. Jackson Park does a number of other things, but the like all the programs that Ugo ran through at the top of the meeting, none of those are extended to South Shore.
Got it. So just the what can happen on city-owned land, so the deep affordability and also the extension of the topo.
Correct. Yeah, but there's Ugo, if you can go back like to those, I think it's like slide 4 or 5. The Woodlawn ordinance, yeah, those a little bit forward, the one with all the program lists. Um, there you go. So all of these are programs that are in the Woodlawn ordinance in some way or another that are not do not cover South Shore. These are limited to just Woodlawn. So these are what we're trying to get feedback on.
Got it.
I want to last slide, and I want to touch base on the working group, the roadmap moving forward for the next 6 months or so. Um, so over the next 6 months, each session will focus on a specific program area from homeowner stabilization to multifamily preservation and land strategy. Again, with the recommendation, these sessions will build towards the to a set of recommendations that move forward a real work plan for this. So session one that we're already in is the overview. Session two is the stabilization and legacy preservation, where we're focused on repair needs, speculation pressures, accessibility opportunities, expand homeowner stabilization supports. Then we'll move into to several people on this call on the loans and the grants, things as such. There we will bring the multifamily preservation, where we was, see the affordability terms, finance and feasibility, and opportunity to strengthen natural occurring affordable housing. Then we will shift into acquisition, rehab, and subsidy gaps. Then city land and affordability pipeline, and then the ordinance performance assessments and in September. So everything is leading up to us putting together clear cut recommendations for today's market so that this ordinance could be a lot more strengthened and we can truly have shovels in the ground much more frequently than before. Thank you. That is all that I have. I really appreciate being this meeting this late. So there's I will send a follow-up email with any notes from today. Smart also a survey so we can keep this moving forward. Instead, I don't want this to just be us meeting and just, talking for the sake of talking. I just want us to really put a real plan together. So we can, I really want us to be forward thinking. Um, so there's any other suggestions, please feel free to email me. Anything that that you may have, anything that you do want to, discuss. Again, I just want to make this as robust as possible so that the information of, the Woodlawn Housing Preservation Ordinance is probably the best one yet, or the best policy that we have in the city of Chicago. And I'm saying that a little biased because, I love the community, so I want to make sure that, we are really, really clear on how we're moving forward. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.